You hear that, After Effects?
You're
fired.
Son of a bitch, it was me, Austin.
It was me all along.
It was me, After Effects.
And
he's not dead, is he?
No, he just retired.
Okay.
He's also facing
so he's practically dead.
He's facing 30 lawsuits or some shit.
So he's like Herschel Walker. Okay.
Kinda. Actually, I met Herschel Walker. That dude is awesome.
I hope so, because him being a politician apparently is a no-go.
I mean, they air everybody's dirty laundry once you decide to go down that rabbit hole. So stay private. But no, he was an ambassador for the Wounded Warrior Games in 2019, and that man is yoked.
Yeah, his neck is bigger than his head. He's got Henry Rollins' neck.
He's in his 50s, and literally he's just walking around like... I'm Herschel Walker.
I like how my image of him when you do that noise is like a ripped chicken. Brr, brr. What if you did Viagra and a laxative and took pre-workout at the same time? You'll shit your boner out.
You turn into Randy Savage.
Oh my god, a giant walking...
Oh yeah, brother!
A giant constipated scrotum.
I'm the cream of the crop. It just rises to the top just like me.
I've soared with the eagles and I've slithered with the snakes, and I'll tell you, brother, I've seen every walk of life from all walks of life across this country. And if you're asking me if the macho man's cried tears of everything, tears of joy, tears of unhappiness, a real man ain't afraid to cry.
Respect.
Much respect, Randy. You're editing this one, right?
No, it was you.
Awesome. So I can completely destroy that. Awesome. Anyway, welcome everybody to...
Was it you or was it me?
Wait, the last one was Fun Times, right?
Yes.
I did edit that one, yes.
Oh, do you want to edit another one?
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to work on the podcast? No.
I really wish we could just do these live and just forget about them.
The edit part is not fun at times, but it's also fun.
It's meticulous because, here's some real talk for everybody.
I don't know about you, but I literally listen start to finish and make my edits as I go.
That's fine. That's a fun way to do it. What I usually do is I make notes of certain points in the show. I'm like, okay, cut that, and I jump ahead and kind of skip around, play through to make sure I don't miss anything. But
listen to my voice.
I don't like listening to my voice. That was the real talk I was going to say. So here's the funniest thing is that I've been told by every walk of life that I have an amazing voice. But whenever I am doing any type of recording and re-recording and editing, all the meticulous work where you hear the stuff after the fact, I cannot stand listening to myself because every single time I even say a word, I'm like, you could do a better read. Every single time. Even when I'm just talking in conversations, that sounded stupid. Fix that. Recut.
Oh, goodness. Well, everybody, so you got to hear a little bit of the real.
We're going to hear Herschel Walker chicken.
Ayo.
Herschel, fucking, there's no chicken pun for that. All right.
Herschel Walking chicken.
It's a stretch.
So, hi, everybody.
I'm John.
And I'm James.
This is Games with John and James. And before we jump into the topic at hand today, I kind of want to do a quick replay. Last episode was fun moments in video games, right?
Yep, and just funny moments in general while gaming.
Cool. So I mentioned how I was playing the new Saints Row game.
Mm-hmm.
And that game, I understand the complaints against it. I really do. It's kind of taken me some effort to kind of jump back into it after playing some other games. I replayed Max Payne 3 and finished Rollerdrome finally, so yay.
I feel like your attention span with video games is literally like that of a squirrel. It's like, dive, dive, dive. Oh, bloop. Dive, dive, dive. Wait, do I have to go back? No, next one. Dive, dive, dive. Next one. Dive, dive, dive.
Here's the thing. If the games are bad, they're not going to hold my attention. So there.
You still need to finish Phantasy Star 4. That's on Sega Genesis.
So what? That's like saying... It's like, oh, you have to like Mario because it was on Nintendo. It's like, no.
You promised the masses and me you would play that.
I'm just saying, other games come out. Because Sonic is coming out next month, and if you think I'm going to be doing anything else with my life, you're fucking sorely mistaken.
Hey guys, you know I talked about this on the podcast, but Sonic!
Yeah, because...
Sonic!
I love him. I want his children. I don't know what I would do with them, but I want them.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some weird Sonic fan art of
and
that.
I've probably drawn it. Anyway, now, look, Saints Row, new game. So the way that the progression system works in that game, where you actually have to do things to progress to get cool stuff, which used to be in video games, which isn't anymore. You have to buy it. That's fun. I have a melee weapon that's a sledgehammer, and you have a heavy attack, which basically just you like, and you like slow swing, and then you're going to spin around a little bit, and you're supposed to hit people. If you kill 25 people with that, you unlock the thing that it does, where apparently if you kill someone with it, it just sends them flying, and I didn't know that. So once I activated the effect, I was like, oh, okay, cool, like a super heavy attack. And I just walked up to somebody on the street and just wailed on them, and then was like, and they flew away. And I'm like, and I literally burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God. And I just went on like a killing spree, just knocking people like into cars and in the lake and stuff. It's like, oh, that's just fun. Good, clean fun.
So since you brought up the replay, so since our last episode, Martha got to play some Warzone with a family that's not in town. And so she's not good. She describes herself as robotic in that game, right? She can't operate the two sticks. Like, she's like, my mind just doesn't think this way. Mm-hmm. However, since she played Jurassic Park Evolution, she got experience flying a helicopter. Uh-huh. So she makes it her mission in that game to hop in the vehicle. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I'm walking through the house while she's playing, and she's like, hey, babe, you got to see this. I was like, what? She's like, look at the helicopter. I was like, oh, are you flying it? And most people avoid the vehicles in that game because they can be hard to use. She's literally just flying perfectly, and it's the pre-match where people are kind of falling in, and she's literally just like, mow them down, mow them down, mow them down, mow them down. She flew through like 5 people, and you just see red splat, red splat, red splat.
So she's doing the lawnmower technique. Gotcha.
And I was like, huh. So I chuckled a little bit. So match starts. I had went into the kitchen, grabbed a snack. On my way back, she'd already got to the helicopter, right? And she purposely like nosedive bombed into a group of like 10 people hiding, and all you just saw was blur, red splat. And I was,
what happened to the helicopter?
I died laughing. Oh, it blew up.
Okay.
I just died laughing because she would literally every match kamikaze at least one person.
Yes. That's how you play video games.
She's like, it's fun. And then the other thing she would do, she'd fly it on top of a water tower, which is really hard to get onto apparently. And she would just hop into the passenger seat with the gun and just grab the gun and just start raining death on people.
Just pot shots at people. All right.
And my brother-in-law, I heard him say, he's like, you know, that's not how you play the game, but I see why you would do that. We're coming to you.
Yeah, I'm holding, like, that's holding position. That's like King of the Hill right there.
Exactly.
So,
and then aside from that, I have my hot fire review.
All right.
As you all know, John hit up a yard sale a while back, and he acquired Final Fantasy Tactics for me, the green label one, as we went on a pseudo diatribe for like 5 seconds about.
I mean, black label, green label, greatest hits. It's like, do you want the platinum hits version or something on 360, or do you want the real deal?
That. So I am proud to say I'm in the final act. I am exploring the optional dungeon, and I think I'm on the 4th floor of that. So
I want you to inform the uninformed masses. How many hours did it take to get to the end game of that game?
Oh yeah, I told John. So I will share with you. I am 74 hours in.
74 hours, and I got you that game maybe 2 weeks ago. When did you start playing it?
Immediately.
Okay. So that's not too bad. At the same time, 70 plus hours divided over 14 days. So,
yep.
So that's about 7 hours a day. It's a little under 7 hours a day.
Literally. So yesterday, we, so throughout the week, work, we do have a day where we get to telework. And on telework.
Oh, so you're being a delinquent. I see.
No. I keep my work computer open. I've got my email ready. If I need to respond or reply, I'm there. But until then, just diving into the game. Martha wakes up and she's like,
we're sending this to the commander.
Hey, that's fine. I just admitted I work and play simultaneously.
I use one hand on the joystick, one hand on my other joystick, and one hand on the keyboard.
Hey, good thing it's turn-based.
Yeah, my turn.
So Oh, man.
What's the music that you envision when you're jerking off? Leave a comment. No, I just hear.
So the reason why I'm recommend this is the review. I've played through most of the game, and honestly, this is one of those. If you haven't had the opportunity to play this game, there are a variety of ways you can do it. You can go the old-fashioned route, pick up the copy. You can pick up a PS1, or say you don't want to deal with a CRT TV or a converter, pick up a PS3. They play all the PlayStation 1 games. It is tactical RPG goodness at its finest, and it's
next to Rhapsody.
So rewarding. Ignore that comment. No, it's just been fun. Combat's great. The story's great. It's and then fun fact, it's also in the world that Final Fantasy 12 is in. It's in Evilus, which Final Fantasy 12 is also in that world.
Nice.
And that's like one of the weird things that you know as well as I, they have never really done.
Yeah.
So kind of a cool little random tangent of a fact.
You don't get the bunny people in that game, do you?
Not that I know of.
3 out of 10.
No furries, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
John's shown his true colors.
Yeah.
But that's a definite play it. If you can't find an original copy, it's very easily emulatable.
Emulatable.
And if you don't want to go that route, well, I mean, check your local retro store. It's very inexpensive. I think you spent, what, $20 for it?
Yeah, I think so.
And that's not bad, considering the amount of game you get.
Mm-hmm.
Still to this day.
Since you did a review, are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I always feel like I'm jumping in and cutting people off.
Oh, we have to leave it with the certified golden seal of approval. Play it.
Just like a little noise, but
stamp.
There you go. But I will give a quick fire review as well. I mentioned a little bit ago how I replayed Max Payne 3. I played that game once in my life, like when it came out over, I think 10 years ago now, which is crazy.
Were you the sole survivor?
No. I didn't even play the multiplayer. But and the funny thing is I remember not liking it because I felt like it was character assassination for Max when I played through it. Because Max Payne 2 and 1 were some of my favorite games. And Remedy did a great job of not only having a gritty noir, Guns Akimbo style, like John Woo, like shoot fun game.
Yeah.
But it also had levity. It was also dark and full of like really human moments. A lot of great narration, all sorts of like all those games were like those 2 games were perfect. Max Payne 1 less so because of the dream sequences, but like Max Payne 2 was one of my favorite games for a long time. 3 comes out and it's basically just Dan Houser and his freaking brother ruining Max Payne to me, and that kind of soured my perception on the game. Replaying it though, and if it's one of those weird things where I'm sitting on how I should review this and say it's a Rockstar game and they don't do linear action games because they're bad at it.
No, they
are bad at it.
It's
play Red Dead Revolver and tell me that's fun. It's not. Because they took it from Capcom. Anyway, no. What I'm going to say is like you're supposed to explore in those levels, and yet they will constantly railroad you and corridor you to the fact that you're basically just walking in a line that is very finely detailed, but it goes to show that they really only tried to facilitate a story and not much else, because the gameplay, they use their Euphoria engine, and using the Euphoria engine is basically just trying to pilot a wrecking ball that shoots bullets, which is stupid.
Cue Miley Cyrus.
That's her. That was my Miley Cyrus impression. No.
Oh, that's Miley B. Cyrus.
Sex. Anyway, I'm running. It's one of those things where I'm still formulating my thoughts on it as I'm thinking about it. But
I guess the big question, since this is your Hotfire review, did you enjoy your replay?
I did, but only when I kind of just let the game play itself. The more I felt like I was fighting against it every time I was trying to play it the way I wanted. So Rockstar, they make really quality games. Sometimes they just don't make them good. You know what I mean? The quality is there, the writing can be there, the presentation can be there, but if you just want... The whole point of Max Payne was to have an over-the-top action shoot game, and they took all of that out and made it very scripted. And I don't like it too much.
So it gets a little play it.
It gets a 6 try it.
Not even a play it, it gets the try it.
Yeah, it gets a try it. Because if who knows, it's also really fucking annoying that I have it on my Series X and it will mask the loading. The way that it worked was that it pretended to say it was loading to just play a cutscene. So I'm on a Series X. There's no excuse for that game to be loading at all, and yet still it'll say still loading. I'm like, no, it's not. You're lying to me. I can't skip the cut. If I can't skip the cutscene, just tell me I can't skip the cutscene.
I don't trust you.
Yeah. So fuck that.
So John mentioned something, and honestly, I want to, give a shout out to quality, awesomeness, kind of a wonderful path, and a journey, which is what this episode today is going to take you on. For as John and I dove into the history of his most beloved brand, Sega.
Yeah. What are we doing?
We are going to take you on a journey through the history and the wonderment for both their good, their bad, and their horribly, horribly dumb moments of Sony.
There's at least 3 that I know of.
4, technically.
The Vita.
The Vita was not a dumb moment. It just didn't pick up in North America. The Vita in Japan destroyed.
No, it didn't.
It did.
If it did, it would still be here.
No, it wouldn't. It didn't destroy enough. It was like the Sega Saturn. Saturn did great in Japan, but did not do enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you can't have a viable console if it's only good in one market.
Big facts. So when we come back, we're going to take you on this mystical journey that was the Sony PlayStation.
I can't replicate the Sony 1 startup noise, so just imagine that, and we'll be right back. One thing I forgot to mention during our intro was I went to a Gorillaz concert last weekend, and holy crap, that show was amazing. But I mentioned it to the person who were the proprietor of this store. I visited a retro game store called Happier Times Gaming. It was in like a little storage, it's not like a storage locker, but you know how they have...
It was a hole in the wall.
Yeah, it was a hole in the wall type place that people can just rent out and, host their businesses. It's like a garage or something. It's like set up that way. But yeah, they just had a bunch of old games. They had like Virtual Boy games, which, holy crap, a huge collection of NES games and all sorts of stuff. But they were really nice and the prices were good. And I found a copy of standalone Mario Bros, which is really hard to find because, I don't know if it's that hard to find, but I know it's hard to find for me because you usually just find the Duck Hunt combo pack of Mario Bros, or like the World Class Track Meet 3-pack or whatever. But yeah, I found that, and yeah, so then a lot of fun.
Mario time.
Also, the movie trailer came out for that.
Yep, so...
Give it a 6, try it.
So, welcome back. And
see how much nicer that is?
Rude.
See how much more right I am than you?
I'm going to actually let John. So John actually found some very cool facts.
Oh, yeah.
About early
game
Sony.
Facts.
So we're going to take you back actually to 1946.
Yes.
Post World War II Japan, a man by the name of Masaru Ibuka, he was working in an electronics shop in a department store, no less, and his coworker Akio Morita, they founded TTK. What does that stand for, John?
It's like Tokyo Teleelectronics Corporation.
And they built Japan's first domestic tape recorder, the Type G, in 1958.
And that's how it all started. Sony's dependence on making their own hardware, a frickin' tape recorder.
So a couple years later, they made a splash across the pond here in America with those transistor radios that they had been working on. And ironically, it was a first in the U.S. with Sony Corporation USA, which was founded in 1960. They pioneered hardware, which was the Walkman, Betamax, Handycam, Crystal LED.
Yeah, and we're jumping around on the timetable a bit, but Sony was known as a trusted brand for a lot of audio equipment. I mean, the Walkman by itself revolutionized how people consume music. The fact that you can look at a Smithsonian or the museum and that tape deck, that Walkman with the orange headphones, your life suddenly had a soundtrack that you could control. I want people to, I want freaking Zoomers to fucking realize this for a second. You didn't used to have a thing in your pocket that did everything for you. You used to have a dedicated thing that would do one dedicated function, and that's it. And probably didn't even have auto reverse, too. So you got to flip the tape.
One sec, let me listen to my tape. Let me get my pager ready. And
let me get my two-way out.
Right.
I'm dealing drugs.
So from 1960 until 1980, it was strictly hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So John found a pretty awesome fact. And so in 1980, a man by the name of Norio Oga became president of Sony. And it was during his presidency that he actually started to support the development of the CD. So that kind of paved the way for Sony through 1991. So up until 91, Sony really didn't have a lot to do with the video game industry.
Mm. They were basically the people who made the things that you played music on or you played games on. One of another random facts that I was looking in the Sony history, they used to make computers, and one of those computers was the MSX, which had Konami games on it, namely Metal Gear. So the relationship between Kojima and Sony goes back a long, long time to like the beginning.
Right? So the one thing, so you kind of have a little bit of what they did. Like if you look at it, it was kind of similar. Well, I said kind of twice.
Similar. So it's like a quarter similar.
So it was similar to what Sega was doing. Hardware, because Sega was doing the arcade cabinets, they were focused elsewhere, and they were being very successful with it.
Sega was like all over the place. Like not like in the same way Nintendo used to be a company that would host like love hotels and stuff, but like Sega would make folding bicycles and like rear projection televisions.
Sega or Sony?
Sega.
Okay. Making sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's a Sony bicycle
that we know of.
It would look so cool, but the load times would be ass.
So, Sony's only real interaction for consoles was in the 80s. So here's a cool fact: the sound chip in the Super Famicom and the Super Nintendo was actually supplied by Sony.
Yep, Ken Kutaragi headed up the project, and it was just done as a favor because his daughter liked the Nintendo games.
Now, that name, Ken Kutaragi,
Does that ring a bell, anybody?
So he is actually dubbed the father of the PlayStation. So he was the one that started that whole process. So outside of working with them on the Super Famicom with the sound chip, they didn't really do much. So they also had a video game studio at this time, which was called Sony ImageSoft. Didn't really push too many things out.
I think they were more of a publisher, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I know that they made Skyblazer for the Super Nintendo. I think it was because, and I'm sure it's in the notes, but this was like Sony Computer Entertainment was a joint venture that spawned out of Sony Music because the branches were comparative to each other because Hardware Division was pushing things like CD technology, so they're like, hey, why don't we make a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo? Well, we need to learn how to make games to do that.
Now, here's the ridiculous part. So John mentioned something really, really critical there. Like Nintendo and Sony were already talking about CD-ROM technology as early as 1988. Let that sink in.
Damn.
1988. So the two companies were actually starting to try and create a CD-ROM version of the Super Famicom that John mentioned. And Nintendo denied the existence of the Sony deal as late as March 1991. So you're paving the way with Nintendo. You're getting Nintendo set up to dominate the market in a unique way. And Nintendo doesn't even want to say, oh yeah, this is with Sony.
Well, yeah, because Hiroshi Yamauchi was a very Nicost businessman, and so he would keep things very close to the vest and sometimes just say shit on a whim. Like, I can't wait until we actually get to the post-PlayStation launch, because he has some quotes that are a real doozy.
So,
and I've never used that word in my life. That is exclusive, ladies and gentlemen.
It was nuts. So here's where it all happened.
I've used nuts plenty of times.
Hey-o. So the critical break and the reason we ended up getting the PlayStation. So at the Consumer Electronics Game Show, so why did I say game show? Show.
Mm-hmm. CES in Las Vegas.
In June 1991, Sony actually revealed a Super Famicom with the built-in CD-ROM. and it incorporated Green Book technology, or CDI, and they called it the PlayStation, also known as the SNES CD. Literally 1 day after the reveal, Nintendo announced that it would be breaking its partnership with Sony, opting to go with Philips instead, but using the same technology. So that is case in point, Nintendo being a douchebag. Hey, we like your technology, but we're going to partner somewhere else. Thanks for giving us all the blueprints.
Here's the thing about that a lot of people don't, I'm sure they don't remember or try not to, about like Japanese companies in the 80s and 90s, is that they didn't want some of the money. They wanted all of the money. So the idea, I mean, that's every business, but like if you have a proprietary technology that's going to be the cutting edge of something, and you're telling me that I have to split production costs and have you have more control over something that's part of our company. So Nintendo saw that and they were like, no thanks. We're going to get a better deal with an American company because fuck that.
So
even if the product is worse.
Like the hard reality is Nintendo had no idea how they were going to split revenue, and Nintendo wanted to be the dominant partner in this relationship.
Yeah,
so instead of
these are the same people who stuck with cartridges for the 64 because they didn't want people to have the control to like manufacture their own discs or something like that. Some stupid reason that they invented a problem for.
So back in the 80s and 90s, like honor and integrity, like they're really big things and definitely strive for it. But for Japanese businessmen, it was their lifeline. It was their samurai sword, for lack of a better expression.
Look, Bushido informs so much about Japanese culture even to this day. The fact that they predominantly play rhythm games is like a testament to that. And I can get into that on another episode.
Oh, man.
You want to know why them guys are so good at DDR and shit? I'll tell you.
So when that deal broke, it pissed off the president, Norio Oga.
Yeah, he was livid. And to the I don't want to steal your thunder, but the way that it was done, basically it was said to Ken Kutaragi, it's like, we can still salvage this project. He just, slit fans on the desk like, do it.
And that was unheard of at the time, because companies like this, it's meet with the board of directors, it's get the overall vote, right?
Yep.
And then dive in. Oga was so infuriated, it was literally like, I don't care. You will do this.
Fuck you. I'm the boss. Get it done.
I can just imagine the desk flip at that point.
Hell yeah.
So here's a really cool part that I found out. So
tell the people.
When Oga did that and appointed Kutaragi head of development for this, those negotiations were still going on between Nintendo and Sony. So not only did Nintendo break their deal, they played a game of, cool, we'll play your game for a little bit while we get ready to destroy you in the next console generation.
Yep.
And here's the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo decided to offer Sony a non-gaming role regarding that new partnership with Philips. The proposal was literally rejected by Kutaragi because he essentially was like, why would we do this? This is dumb and does not benefit us in any way.
Yeah.
And
It's because Nintendo thought so little of the actual game development and hardware development prowess of Sony that they were just like, yeah, you don't know shit about games, so just let us do it.
So it was just mind-blowing how little Nintendo cared. Because when you think about it, Nintendo, I would say because of that, they created their worst enemy. If you look at history, Nintendo, up until, I want to say, a little bit of the Wii and the Switch. And there's obviously a console in between with the Wii U and all the other ones.
There's a console in between that we often don't talk about.
But if you look at PS1, dominated. PlayStation 2, still the number one selling console of all time.
Yep.
PSP, a landmark success, almost 100 million units on that. Yep. PlayStation 3, almost 100 million units. PlayStation 4, over 100 million units.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's an impressive track record when you consider, the Virtual Boy.
Yeah. Nintendo.
When you consider the Virtual Boy, the Sega 32X, the two companies that were seen as the two only competitors in the game industry were more than capable of fucking up.
And Nintendo has this track record of making their own worst enemy. Nintendo Nintendo's idiocy allowed Sega to almost wreck them, and then their idiocy ruined this relationship. And the Nintendo 64, regardless of the party games and the nostalgia fest that it was, the PlayStation 1, it ruled the market.
Yeah. The Nintendo 64 was a tough sell, even then. Like, you can only make Ocarina of Time once. You know what I mean? Because the long-standing kind of agreement when you buy a Nintendo console is you get Nintendo games.
Yep.
But what also salvages that entire product is the fact that you have third-party developers. So I know that we're going to get to it later in the story, but when you don't have third-party developers, which Sony was really good at courting at the time, you kind of lose a lot of leverage in your own business.
I mean, half your Nintendo 64 library is gone for good with Rare.
When the Rare Replay came out for Xbox One back in the day, there were more Nintendo 64 games on Xbox than there were on Switch or Wii U or the Virtual Console.
Big facts. So May 1992 comes by. We got to bring it back in, right?
1992. I was like 4.
I was 6.
You're older than me?
Yes, I thought you knew this.
I was trying to create false drama.
I was like, are you living in an alternate timeline? Like, the amount of energy drinks you drink, are you like hopping back and forth between them? You just vibrate over to here and then vibrate back?
I know people don't like talking about it now because of Twitter bullshit, but yeah, it's like Harry Potter. It's like I have the time turner, so I'm just living ahead of time, and then I just turn back.
Stock bets.
Oh, fuck yeah. If I had the almanac, everything would be Trump Tower. But it would just say the bear.
Jono.
Jono. That sounds like a Byronco.
So, May 1992, those negotiations totally ended. You fast forward one more month. So, June 1992, there was a giant executive meeting between Sony's president, Oga. You had PlayStation's head, Kutaragi, and several of the senior members on Sony's board. So, at this meeting, that's when Kutaragi unveiled what would make the PlayStation a success. And as John mentioned it was a proprietary, because Sony loves to do that, but it was a proprietary CD-ROM based system that he'd been working on, which lets you play video games in 3D. So,
and you can thank Sega for the blueprints for that bullshit.
President Oga, still hyped up on the betrayal, was the one that kept this going. So the meeting did not go well, but he was the one that decided to retain the project, and after being reminded by Kutaragi, because Kutaragi knew, I got to press this button. Kutaragi's like, they're going to tell me no, poke the bear, poke the bear.
Yeah, which is, again, one of those things where it's like, that is such like, I can see it as like a scene in a movie, where, you know how like in Shin Godzilla, there's the scene where they're all on like a board trying to discuss how to kill Godzilla, and it's just like, stop talking and do something.
Right?
It's like that.
It's like, old heads must go.
Yes, we must do things this way.
So, like, Kutaragi, on point. He reminded Oga of the humiliation he suffered, so Oga was like, I give 0 fucks. We're making this happen.
It's like when Tom Kalinske was put in charge of Sega of America, and they were initially just like, because he originally thought the meeting was going terribly after he was discussing his entire pitch to how they could dominate the West. And yet they were just like, we hired you to take over the West with Sega. Go do it.
Now, funny that you mentioned that. After this meeting, so the meeting didn't go well. So several of the older executives really opposed it, and it also met even more internal opposition. So Oga moved Kutaragi and his team from Sony's headquarters, right? So literally like pick up and move to Sony Music.
Yep.
Which was a completely separate financial entity to bypass the opposition. Like, that is big balls on the table saying, I don't care if I ruin my company, I will defend my honor. Yeah. And I am all for that kind of drama. That's like a General Hospital episode in the making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny how you got to wonder how many decisions like that are made every day, you know? And not just in video games, but like in movie deals or other types of manufacturing or any kind of stuff. Business people are badass, is what I'm saying. I couldn't even get through that sentence.
Oh, now here's even more icing on the cake. So I didn't know this. This is one of the facts that kind of blew my mind. Okay. So they shifted over to Sony Music to kind of dodge the bullet, right?
This is one of these facts that blew my mind. Did you know that the PlayStation 2 was originally going to be on the plane? One of the planes that flew into the Twin Towers? Holy shit.
Conspiracy Theory 101.
Did you know that Nintendo bought them the ticket? You know about that with Seth MacFarlane, don't you? It's like, and he's like, he was super hungover. He's like, I'm glad I didn't catch my plane.
Yep. So Sony did this, aside from, the separation, right? But they did it to also retain their project that was working with Philips for the MMCD development project. And that project actually led to the creation of the DVD. So not only did Oga big brain move, get it away to a different financial entity, Oga maintained a relationship with Philips, who had a relationship with Nintendo.
Yeah.
Oga was straight up backdoored. I get what I want.
I gotta wonder if people in like any other Japanese company actually likes working with Nintendo. It must be like you're like this shitty little brother who also does one really cool thing. So it's like we keep you around.
Nintendo's just like the repetitive bosses of Yakuza, the Yakuza franchise. Everybody hates them, but you gotta fight them.
Yeah. Just rip their shirt off and ride a motorcycle down a pipe.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
whatever the fuck happens in there. There's like 20 of them. Who cares?
Right?
They are milking that franchise, and we still haven't had a new Jet Set Radio. Fuck you, Sega.
I mean, everybody. So Dark Horse, right? Initially, because Yakuza was out back on the PlayStation 2, right?
Yeah, and it was one of the biggest localizations that Sega ever tried to do.
And it flopped.
Of course it flopped, because they tried to make it appeal to Western audiences by taking away its entire identity.
And for up until the PS4, flop, 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 flop. And then all of a sudden, it was Yakuza Like a Dragon. That was the one that just made everybody be like, oh my god, this franchise is good.
I think it was 4.
Was it
5,
4?
6. They did Dead Souls as well, which was kind of like a throwaway thing that was done for fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think it was when it got to the PS3 and 4, that's when Yakuza was like, some to this. I think people were because I think people were trying to look for Shenmue and they didn't find it. And then they found Yakuza. It's like, this is kind of the same.
Yep. So there was Sony Music, right? They're officially there. So
that's where Nana Onsha is too, which led to the creation of Parappa the Rappa. So fuck yeah.
Hey, such a good game. Mm-hmm. Parappa the Rappa.
That's not a rap.
Hey, you know what? That's my rap.
What? This is fucking.
I'll just say Parappa the Rappa. Rappa.
I was just gonna say it's fucking Jersey Boys. For the longest time.
Oh no. So, fast forward just a little bit more. So, according to Sony Computer Entertainment's producer Ryoji Akagawa and their chairman Shigeo, man, I'm butchering this name, Maruyama.
Maruyama. Yeah, you got it.
So, the PlayStation hit kind of a little speed bump because they were unsure of should they do 2D sprites or 3D polygon graphics. Shout out to Sega here.
Yeah.
So after they witnessed the success of Sega's Virtua Fighter in Japanese arcades, shout out Virtua Fighter, you helped pave the way for PlayStation. Thank you, Sega.
You can also thank Sega for the entire actual layout of their console to prioritize 3D graphics.
Mm-hmm. So after Sony saw that, they realized immediately the direction is going to be 3D polygon graphics.
It's actually to the point where it was a detriment for any 2D sprite-based games. Like, if you tried to load like certain images in PlayStation, like there were lots of good 2D games on PlayStation, but in the
Final Fantasy Tactics 2D sprites.
But in the same way, like it's weird how each console handled graphics so differently. Like the fact that because they went with, we're going to use polygons, so four-sided shapes. The Sega Saturn used tries, 3-sided shapes for their 3D models. So they had to be completely different beasts to actually be different games. Whereas you had Nintendo 64, which predominantly only handled 3D. So if you wanted to do anything 2D on it whatsoever, SOL. Like you're fucked.
So Sega, shout out. We love you. Thank you. Virtua Fighter gave...
We're sorry you're dead.
I mean, they're half dead. It's like 1 foot in the grave, 1 foot not.
As long as Hatsune Miku is still making money, Sega will be around.
And Soccer Wars. You know, that's becoming like a sleeper franchise of untold proportions.
It's been around since like the Sega Saturn, man. So I'm sure it's. I actually want to play the new one.
Oh, I'll bring it in for you.
How long is it?
Soccer Wars games are maybe 10 hours most.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Do you have any idea how many short games appeal to me? Like, you have no idea. I'm a grown-ass man. I got shit to do.
I will not ever have a backlog. Why? Because if a game goes past 10 hours and 2 minutes, it's dead to me.
A game has like 10 minutes to entice me. And if it doesn't do that, I'm not into it.
I mean, Soccer Wars may take a little bit more to entice you.
Yeah, but there's women, and you can flirt, and you're like a hot dude, and there's ones that got big boobies, so it's fine.
Well, we know where John's interest in video games lies.
My interest in video game lies in women.
His aesthetics are women. And as he quoted in another episode, hunky boys.
Oh, God, yeah. Big beefers, Guilty Gear Strive.
Big beefers?
Yeah.
What is a big beefer?
Chonky boys. You said it. Big beefers. Fucking soul bad guy. Like, everybody in Guilty Gear Strive got a glow up. They started taking roids, and now they're big beefers. Fucking A.
So,
and once you start working out, you start noticing hot bods, so you want to just take a look sometimes.
Oh, my God. Well... Now that we've unlocked John's nightmare drawer.
That's not a nightmare drawer. That's heaven. That's meat heaven.
Well, John's going to the Sausage Fest, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
They'll be built different.
Built forward to... I don't know. What's a slogan I can use there?
Built forward tough. John's butt.
That was too much dumpy.
Dumpy frumpy?
Dump in my trunk and funk.
So...
Yo, can I open up a bar in the back of my car and just call it junk? Because there's junk in the trunk. But you don't say that. You don't say that part. It's just called junk.
So... Well, I gotta bring it back in. So literally after that...
Are you sure? We can talk about this for the rest of the episode.
I mean, we could, but...
You see my biceps?
So after that, they worked on their logo, which was really cool because the creator of the logo, Manabu Sakamoto, actually wanted the logo to capture the effects of what the console could do. Mm-hmm. He literally created it as an optical illusion. And if you look at it from a graphics design perspective, which you do,
yes,
it is a perfect optical illusion of the time.
Yep.
You can tell so much love was poured into that.
Oh, dude, like seeing the revision, if you actually look at the revisions of the PlayStation logo, there are some that are really, really cool. But based on what you just said, yeah, I can see exactly why they picked the PS that they did.
So...
It's not... Because if it looked like the Mega CD logo, it'd be like, oh, okay, another one of these.
After all of this work... So Sony executives were still kind of skeptical. They were still kind of on the fence. Like, they're old business for some stupid reason.
Dude, its old business practices are like the landmark of every Japanese company. The Zaibatsu mindset, like your goal as a company is to stay in business. What stays in business means something that works, and you do what works over and over again until it doesn't anymore.
So December 3rd, we're going to fast forward 2 years to December 3rd, 1994. That is the initial launch of the PlayStation. Oh my goodness. So
jumping flash, like day one buy.
It had successor consoles like the Net Yorose, which was a special black PlayStation with tools and instructions to program PlayStation games. That is my holy grail.
You want an actual dev kit PlayStation?
No, I want the Net Yorose.
That's a dev kit PlayStation.
It is, but I want the Net Yorose. If you look at the other PlayStation dev kits, they were different. This one was specifically that.
Yep.
That's what I want. That is my holy grail of consoles.
Let me get on eBay real quick.
So on top of that, you got a smaller version of the PlayStation, the PS1.
The PS1's so cute.
And then remember the Pocket Station?
I do, but it wasn't the PlayStation, it was just a little VMU.
So 5th generation of video game consoles. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Sony, you got screwed by Nintendo. You fired what almost was the death blow for Nintendo. Nintendo in Japan.
It's just a black PlayStation, but it's fucking cool looking.
Right?
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've seen it?
I know it existed and I've seen it, but like I didn't know that it was just like I know I'm looking at it now and I'm like, you could afford that.
What is it?
It's like $2,000.
I don't know. I don't want to spend $2,000.
Then stop buying 50 copies of video games or freaking WATA graded Sonic Heroes cartridges, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have some spare change to buy something you actually want.
No, I still have spare change. Oh, fun fact, completely random.
Fuck you for having money. Fuck you. Fuck God for inventing love and money.
So, jeez. So,
oh fuck, this is a bundle?
Yeah.
Oh, what? This one's even cheaper. This is only $900, and it comes with all 3 Crash Bandicoot games. Get that.
You know, Christmas is here, John.
I don't have $900. I used to, but I have someone I want to go visit. So
fair. No.
Oh, sick.
So
I'm adding that to my watch list because I'm going to buy it for me, and you can watch me play it.
Watch you develop games.
Oh God, I'm going to make a game called Don't Shoot the Puppy.
Bongo bumpers.
It's gonna be called Beefaroni, and it's basically just a flex contest and see who's got the hottest sips.
Oh no! So completely random side.
This
quest.
is the episode where John reveals he's actually gay.
Well, I mean, it's about time.
No, I think my girlfriend would have a problem with that.
He's video game gay.
I'm video game.
Yep, you're a video gamer.
You're telling me you looked at frickin' Soul Bad Guy's face and just not like, I want to die in his arms?
No, not me.
Not you. Yeah, right. You're every guy who plays video games is in the closet.
Oh man,
I sound like one of those guys on TV, the 700 Club. Does your kid play Dungeons and Dragons? He's probably worshiping the devil and a homosexual.
Jesus. This is my co-host, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I deal with on a daily basis.
We lived through it. We got past it.
You lived through it. I was overseas, remember? It was a completely different world for me.
So you didn't have freaking crazy fundamentalists out there?
No.
Europe? What?
Not
in Italy?
Dude, no. It was awesome. I kid you not. Like, we would just get together, game, have a good time. Like, the parents would encourage it. The parents would just, bring your friend, come on over. And I'm just like, what? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna game, mom's making dinner. It was just awesome. Also very fattening because Italian multi-course meals is just carbs on carbs on carbs on carbs.
Yeah, you need strength to game.
So, fun side quest, which I keep getting barred away from.
Because you're talking about how hot these dudes are. I get it.
Over the weekend, I had a bunch of extra collector's editions. I'm downsizing on that because I already own the games.
Right.
So I bring those in to Henry at Flashback Video Games. He got a complete in-box copy with both maps pristine Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo. And I almost did a straight-up trade for it.
How much? How much was it?
That's $800.
For $800, you could get a Netya Rose with all 3 Crash Bandicoots.
I could, but no, I just did it for cash. So, like, just
gotta buy drugs somehow.
Hey-oh, more video games.
Those are my drugs. I grind them up and snort them. Gets past my blood-ring barrier. All the tactics.
So, I'm gonna reel us back in 100% now. So,
this is the episode where we learn that John's gay and also a drug addict.
You want to smoke some crack?
I mean, we kind of already knew that, but anyway, continue.
Or as Tally would say, you want to get high?
Don't forget to bring a towel. You want to get wet?
And high.
Wet, hot, you know what I'm saying.
So, PlayStation releases.
If you know, you know.
Yep. So, the PlayStation 1 releases, and...
finally.
So, it wasn't discontinued until the 2006 range. Literally, it was the first video game console ever to reach 120 million units sold. And we're talking...
Not shipped, sold.
We're talking Nintendo, which had dominated the 80s, dominated up until 1990 before they overtook... Like, Nintendo was so focused on Sega when PlayStation hit them. Like, I personally feel like the Nintendo 64 is kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to just kind of get it out there. Like, we had to compete.
Oh, that was the Virtual Boy.
Well, that was also one. Yeah, definitely. Oof.
Yeah, that was not a developed project.
And they're competing with... So in this 5th generation of consoles, they're competing with the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64. And we're just going to call it how it is. The PlayStation 1 dominated that generation.
Yeah, it did. And are we going to stop the history at the PlayStation 1 and just basically say the rest is history?
So Wait, what?
Are we going to just say like then the PS2 happened, the 3 happened, and whatever?
Oh no, we're gonna go through some gloriousness.
Okay, I think it'd be cool to have a little break, but I'll send you guys to break with a cool fact. So, PlayStation, right? You know Apple computers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how a little program called Bleem and how that started?
No.
It started when the people developing the Bleem project basically were like, oh, we can like rip the ISOs of PlayStation games and make them run as executables on computers. How about we make a product that makes PlayStation games playable on Apple computers? At Macworld, at the Apple keynote speech in like 1996 or 7, Steve Jobs actually came out on stage and said, and now we have a new program coming out that you can purchase that allow your Apple computers to play PlayStation games. That was a real product that eventually did not release because Sony was like, no way, you're stealing our content. You can't do that. But the fact that that was this close to happening, the fact that it was on the stage and being announced, holy crap.
It just shows, like, when you are that dominant, everybody wants a piece of it.
Yep. It's also Apple's insecurities because, like, we're not gaming computers, we're work computers. We promise.
So, yeah. So that's been the history. So we wanted, like, the PlayStation 1, that's that pivotal historic moment because it was its launch console, did better than Nintendo's launch console, did better than Nintendo's second console, did better than Nintendo's third console. Hell, it did better than all consoles except for the Switch, because I think the Switch is probably going to be one of the consoles that actually surpasses the PlayStation 1. And to put that into perspective, that means the PlayStation 1 sold more units than total units of every other. So if you look at total units sold, just beat Nintendo at every one. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the PlayStation 2 and the other cool things, because Nintendo was able to kind of steal a little bit of the market back in a sense. Well, not really steal, just continue their dominance of a market.
Everything we talk about Nintendo is always sneaky, isn't it?
It is, except for their handheld. I feel like their handhelds, for the most part, that hasn't been sneaky. It's just cool. Nobody knows how to beat us here. Get wrecked.
It's basically Gunpei Yokoi saying, like, anything that Nintendo can do, this thing can do, so let's make that.
So when we come back, we'll give you some funner moments. And yes, that is not a word.
I think we're all in agreement on that. All right, stick around, folks. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. John actually brought up something pretty cool. So
I do that sometimes.
You know, he has his moments.
In between fantasizing about muscly men.
We interrupt this fantasy to bring you this latest report.
Interrupt this wet dream for something to dry you out. Yes, you are editing this one. Good. I can't be held responsible for the things I say. Good thing I'm a broadcaster.
So we were talking about dominance of the generation. So clear winner for Gen 5, PlayStation. Clear winner for Gen 6, PlayStation. Like the PS2, like
Xbox and GameCube, yeah.
Nothing could touch the PS2, right? I mean, that's the reason why the PS2 was still releasing consoles till 2013.
Yep, when the PlayStation 4 came out.
Like, that's insane, right?
I think it's also reflective on the sentiment behind the PS3, the market sentiment behind the PS3.
So John was talking about media impressions. If you ask anyone for Gen 7, which was your 360, your PS3, your Wii, a lot of people say it was won by the Wii and then won by the 360.
Yeah, because if you look at all of the freaking hardcore gamers who were, you know, slamming their doing Doritos and playing Halo 3 and Call of Duty over Xbox Live, it was that. Or you're talking to, you know, old folks in nursing homes who were bowling again because of the Wii Sports. The Wii Sports, not Wii Sports, the Wii Sports.
And here's the hard reality. You look at total units sold, PlayStation 3 still won, which is mind-boggling. So
again, it's the perceptions that people have. Because even if you asked me up until now, I'd say like, yeah, the PS3 didn't flop. It was just there.
And then you look at the numbers and it's just like,
fuck.
What?
You're like, dang it, I was wrong. My math was wrong.
So we'll progress in time nicely. So PlayStation 1's still out. PlayStation 1 was still selling consoles up till 2006.
Yeah, they were because everyone had it, you know? Like, so, if you have an established base that has these games, it has these consoles, why abandon them?
Now, the culmination of that work with Philips back in the 90s, PlayStation 2 hits. The reason for the PlayStation 2's meteoric rise to success, like, it wasn't just, oh, here's a slow, like, takeoff. You couldn't find it in stores. You can go back and look at footage for people waiting for it. One of the stores in New York, people had gotten in line 2.5 weeks early. That's nuts.
I think it's funny, too, because I remember the time the PlayStation 2 came out, and we had a Dreamcast and some other games and stuff like that. I would look at PS2 games, I'm like, Dreamcast is better. And then, lo and behold, Dreamcast wasn't the thing after a few years.
Nope. So
bullshit.
The key to their success was that backdoor working with Philips.
I'll bet.
And the PlayStation 2, it was the first true home entertainment console.
Yep.
DVD players were $300 to $500, depending on if you wanted the super bougie fancy one that could still also do VHS, or your generic one.
The combo pack, hell yeah.
You could get it was what, $199, right?
I believe so.
You could get a PlayStation 2 for $199. Not only could you play PlayStation 2 games, the new kids on the block, it was backwards compatible with your PlayStation 1, so you could just play them better, and you had a DVD player. Legit saved so much money.
Yep.
And when you look at it, it was like, we look at markets, right? You have the Asian market, you have the North American market, Japan and North America. When it comes
I usually have it split with the Western market versus the Eastern market.
Yeah. So video games, it's that the reason why the Xbox didn't really break into Japan was the size. Yeah. People, like, they still enjoyed Halo. They enjoyed those games, but Japanese homes, very small. And you look at that PlayStation 2, it just slid right into everything. Like,
it's pocket size. It's a pocket pussy station. Look at this sleek black thing that slides right in. You know, with that big honking.
Oh man.
BBC, big black console.
So July 2000.
This is probably the gayest episode we've ever done, and I'm all for it.
I mean, big facts.
Big facts indeed.
So PlayStation 2 released July 7th. Of 2000. Didn't wait for holiday season like most consoles did. PlayStation was like, we're dominating the market.
I wonder if that was a fuck you to Sega for trying to launch the Saturn in summer.
Mm-hmm. So one of the big things, like, you had kind of a cosmetic change to the console, which that's cool, but their home menu's graphical user interface, or GUI for short, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with a GUI.
They actually had that in the home menu.
Mm-hmm.
So you could up-res all your PlayStation 1 games, because, I mean, let's be real. Look at Final Fantasy VIII. Easiest example of, dear God, what am I looking at?
Yeah, that was a gargled mess. That's the difference between aesthetic and graphics, folks. Because PlayStation 7, Final Fantasy VII had a very unique aesthetic to it. It had clear delineation between cutscene graphics and game graphics, and the game graphics looked like the chibi sprite art that you saw in other previous Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VIII comes out, and they're trying to be big fancy and try to make the models for the fighters on par or, you know, game ready with like cutscenes, and it just didn't work.
So PlayStation 2, I mean, Dreamcast released early, which was, you know, tried to stave everything off.
But it had mil CD format. And it used a GD-ROM. And it could crack really easy, and
So 15 months after the Dreamcast, that's when the PlayStation 2 released, which was still a year before the Xbox and the GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to just get into every home. They got to dominate that market. And
that was actually a tactic that Xbox borrowed with the 360. Because one of the funny things about, and this is probably going to get ahead into the PS3 conversation, but I believe it was Toshiba handling the graphics chip, the chipset for the PlayStation 3. But the clause in their contract allowed Toshiba to actually license out and develop their internal technologies with the technology they were developing for PlayStation. And they also made the chipset for the 360. So some of the PS3's development in their graphics technology went into the 360 as well. So, haha.
Hey.
The world is a murky, complicated place, and it's all thanks to globalization, folks.
Now, here's the fun part. We've done Sega. We've done Sony. We don't really need to do Nintendo because a lot of you know Nintendo's history because Nintendo. But that means John's fanboying will be the next potential episode we touch in this topic.
The history of Microsoft? Oh, wow.
No, Microsoft Xbox. We can't do all Microsoft, or that'll be...
It's actually pretty hand in hand. Like, you're maybe missing a 10-year gap, and it's like, yeah, they just make software.
That's fair. So
some weird nerd made software with Steve Ballmer, and then they made a company. That's all you need to know.
That's fair. So the PS2 is still the fastest console to 100 million units. And as of December 28th, 2012, so still being produced, more than 155 million units sold.
You can thank Grand Theft Auto San Andreas for that.
Final Fantasy X.
Yep.
Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2.
Yep.
Max Payne, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter. The list goes on. So many iconic...
Kessen.
I actually played Kessen 2. The best thing of Kessen 2 was when you got the fireball spell and you got to drop it on the naval ships and you just literally saw just the ships explode. They put so much detail into the spell animation that they forgot everywhere else. Random side quest.
Here's another random side quest. I inherited a lot of anime and video game magazines from a friend of mine because she was moving out of state. I just cracked the spine on one of them, and it opened up to a full-page ad for Dynasty Warriors, a brand new game from Koei, coming in July 1997. I'm just like, oh my god. The franchise began here. And hopefully, I thought the line would have been drawn there, but no.
And you want to talk... So...
Every fucking Dynasty Warriors game is the fucking same. Except for 9 now, because it's terrible.
I mean, big facts. So obviously the PlayStation 1 released multiple models, getting it smaller and smaller. So the PlayStation 2 also did the Slim. And not only did it do it once, in 2007 it revised it, and then it revised it again after that, just getting it smaller and lighter. But the Slim, like, you want to talk about being ahead of its time and understanding where gaming was going? The Slim had a built-in Ethernet port back in 2004.
The Dreamcast had a phone line and an adapter for broadband output, so...
That's still not a built-in Ethernet port.
It had a built-in modem. It had its own modem, goddammit. That was thinking way ahead.
It was. So, PlayStation 2, would you, like, I even think... You're not, obviously, so
I'm not going to say anything bad about the PlayStation 2. That console was the shit.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're a purist.
All it needed was like a little love hole on the side, and you need nothing else in your life.
Oh, God.
I stole that from an actual TV interview that they had on G4.
Jeez. So, like, no matter if you're a purist or not, everyone will attest. PlayStation 2, most successful console of all time.
Yep.
It was amazing. Introduction of DVD-based games.
Massive storage increase, meaning massive graphics. So all the big graphics got to fit on one disc.
It was just earth-shattering what this console stood for. And it still stood the test of time. There are still PlayStation 2 games that look better than current gen shit being released.
It's the same thing with that entire generation, honestly. Like, if you look at Halo 2 and compare it to Halo 3 when it came out, it's so minor, the changes. HD clarity, and that's it.
Now, Nintendo, the GameCube, kind of a write-off, right? Like, the GameCube never really broke into anything.
What's funny is the GameCube was Nintendo's attempt to compete, not only graphics-wise, by having it basically just be similar to develop for as like the other consoles, but they finally embraced discs. However, they were proprietary GameCube special only discs. So Sony, they dominated the 64 generation. They dominated the GameCube generation. So they came out the gates very slow. So obviously we're progressing in history. Also during the PlayStation 2's time frame, the PSP was released, which that sold 83 million units. I had a PSP. I loved it.
Like, and you got to watch your movies. Those discs,
did anyone do that?
I own a few.
Okay, because I remember having I had 2 UMDs that were Samurai Champloo episodes, and that was it. But do you really want to watch Full Metal Jacket in squinty vision? No.
Look at what we do with our phone nowadays.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's its legacy. Could you imagine a game console that played movies but also sent text messages and also did this and gave you access to the internet? It's oh yeah, you need everything that we have now, right now.
Yep.
The only thing preventing an iPhone from having games with depth in them is buttons.
So PlayStation 3, like I said, was November 11th, 2006 in Japan.
Never forget.
Never forget. So it was the 7th generation console, and it had to go up against the 360 and the Wii. Microsoft took a page out of Sony's playbook, took a page out of Sega's playbook, and they released early. So for the first about 3.5 years of 7th generation consoles, the 360 was dominating. Mm-hmm. The Wii was doing really well, but then PlayStation 3 just kind of kept going. And then what helped it
was like momentum. It had to build it.
So, and what helped it was Blu-ray technology as well. Blu-ray discs, they're going to last, man. Unless you are living in a crusty, decrepit, roach-infested, nastiest place on earth, these discs are going to outlive you and your kids.
Flyover country.
So, this is where Sony made their first big mistake.
What was that?
So, John, while we were talking about this episode, developing for the PS1, easy. Developing for the PS2, easy. Developing for the PS3,
yeah,
god awful.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I was trying to find the exact wording as to why that was the case. So the entire idea was to have the cell processor chip, right? Mm-hmm. The cell processor was basically used as a multi-core graphics chip, like a lot of PCs would do. Now we have multi-core graphics chips everywhere, right? So it was so ahead of its time that no one knew how to work with it. So how do you utilize and compartmentalize all the stuff that you need to do with your programming languages and your consoles, and how do you render graphics while still maintaining system functions and all of that stuff that computers are meant to do? How do you work it through this thing that is so indecipherable? Which is really funny because it also echoes what developing for the PlayStation 1 was like. If you talk to Andy Gavin, he did a show called War Stories that was on,
I remember that.
Ars Technica. I think I showed it to you. Yeah. And he's talking about how he basically just had to break the PlayStation's C libraries and internal code bases and basically be okay, what can I reconstruct to make this thing actually run games better? And that's why Crash Bandicoot looked the way it did when it first came out, because people are there's no way the PlayStation can run that. Sure enough, when you can actually deconstruct the entire internal BIOS of a console, then rebuild it, you can do whatever you want.
So they blundered with that.
I'm sorry, that shit just makes me a huge nerd. I'm just oh my god, breaking down artificial intelligence, computer science. This is amazing.
It's wild. If you look at how much history has gone into video games and how much jailbreaking, testing the limits and everything.
Getting proprietary notes that developers don't get from companies that don't want to tell you.
It is wild. There's a lot of video game history is rich in its roughly 50-year lifespan, give or take.
It's the same thing with a lot of other very young mediums and young art forms in America or around the world, for that matter. We see it as an old medium because we kind of grew up with it. Whereas, no, in the grand scheme of life on this earth, 40 and 50 years is nothing.
100%. And so
I feel the same way about hip hop music. It's one of America's great folk music, and it's only been around for 40 years.
Facts. So, the PlayStation 3, that's the first big blunder I would say that Sony did, because initially, backwards compatible with not only your PlayStation 1 games, PlayStation 2. People, they just weren't buying the new games, so Sony basically said, screw it. By proxy, it can play music CDs, so you can play all of your PlayStation 1 games. Cool, but you can only play the PlayStation 2, I think, on the 20 gig and the 40 gig, right? The first two true ones.
It goes up to the last 80 gig model they did, I think. Or one of the first 80 gig models they did, because I know that the way that it was initially built was the PlayStation 3 was a big chonker of a system that had all of the internals built into it to play and run PS2 and PS1 and PS3 games natively. right?
Mm-hmm.
The Emotion Engine graphics chipset, I believe, or the Emotion Engine CPU, wherever the hell it was, that the PlayStation 2 used was just in the PS3. You could just use it. Whereas then it became, okay, well, how do we emulate this to save costs in manufacturing and make it lighter and not run as hot? So how do we do that?
Yeah, if you have a first generation PlayStation 3, chances are you have replaced your thermal paste once or twice.
If I would have known that it could be fixed that way, I would still have it. Because I remember back in the day when my buddy was living with me and he played RE5 so much that it overheated my PlayStation. Ugh.
So
I'm not mad about it. I mean, clearly, but now I'm trying to find a backwards compatible PS3 just to have it.
I think Henry has one.
How much is it?
We will find out.
All right, because if it's relatively inexpensive, I ain't got money, but I'm going to get some.
So PlayStation 3, it blundered quite a bit, but eventually still won the sales wars with total units sold, which is mind-blowing and a testament to the strength of Sony. Now, the PlayStation 4, ladies and gentlemen. Hoo-wee, the PlayStation 4.
Everything that it was basically just a back and forth between Microsoft and Sony, which is really interesting to think about when it comes to video games, because it used to be dedicated like toy and video game companies. Now they're huge wings of manufacturing and software and hardware companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, what's funny, just one quick do we want to save the Red Ring of Death conversation for the history of Microsoft?
Yes.
Okay, because it's just basically going to stem into my whole talking point that I had for this episode, is how Microsoft is a software company. Sony is a hardware company. And they are very different, and those are very different things in the worlds of video games. So that's why a lot of the stuff that for the 360 and the Xbox and the Xbox One, they backpedaled on some shit. Developing for that stuff was really, really easy, whereas developing for PlayStation was not. Because, yes, here's the hardware. How do you make a game for it? Is a very different conversation than, hey, we've made this thing specifically to make games, so make games for it. You know what I mean?
Yep. So I don't have the total units sold for the PlayStation 4, but
a whole lot.
I know between the pros and the slims, I think it was over 100 million.
Yeah, it totally did.
So
I think the Xbox One shipped like 60 something million.
Here's the ridiculous
Still
part,
not
right?
bad.
So Sony messed up in 7th gen consoles with the PS3. 100%, right?
They messed up the same way that the Xbox One did with messaging and all sorts of, and like being too expensive and all sorts of stuff.
They started development for the PlayStation 4 in 2008. That was when development started for that console. And in 2011, because Sony had waited, so here, this will blow your mind.
All right, blow my mind. Blow me, James. My mind.
Ew. So in 2011, no less, you had North America. So let me get my hard-hitting facts. So PlayStation Europe's CEO, Jim Ryan, he hammered it home to Sony in 2011. So still years before the release and launch of the console, that they wanted to avoid launching the next gen behind the competition. Learn from our mistakes. That was awesome. PlayStation 4, first released here in North America, November 15th, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Critical success.
2 days before my birthday.
Hey.
And I wasn't able to get one, so I got an Xbox One instead, and I played DR3 so much.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you get
a PS4?
Yeah.
I got it maybe a year and a half later. I got the Arkham Knight bundle, weirdly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I didn't really want a PlayStation 4, but I knew it had Infamous on it, and I wanted to play it, so I was like, all right, fine, I'll get it. So, but it wasn't like a day one buy. I think the reason that the Xbox appealed to me way more wasn't the Kinect or its media focus or any of that bullcrap they sold it on. It was like, you know what's coming out day one? Dead Rising 3. I'm like, sold!
So 116.3 million units sold of the PlayStation 4.
Why am I cheering a company? Fucking.
So PlayStation 4, it kind of like it hit the ground running. I mean, you all like remember when they did PlayStation Go where you could play the games on your phone?
Yep.
That was super cool.
You mean PlayStation Now? Is that different?
Was it Now or Go?
Because PlayStation Now fucking sucked. It still does. It still does.
It was just the PlayStation app that allowed you to do it. PlayStation Now is, we're not going to talk about that.
The fact that you can only stream the PS3 games and not have them run on your console, again, is a testament to just how much of a stonewall that frickin' processor chip was. You know, one more side quest before we get into the kind of wrap up, because we're pushing about an hour and a half right here.
For it.
Do you remember the game Crysis?
Yeah.
And that entire reason for that game's existence was to push graphical technology to its limit. And what's funny is if you look at analytics, like Digital Foundry levels of analytics when it comes to how that game actually utilizes its graphics technology, they tried to future-proof it and make the game basically apply to things like how much like RAM is intensive or something. I don't remember the exact actual delineations that were made, but like what was it? The strength of the processor versus clock speeds were like how they chose to develop the game. So if you had higher clock speeds on your processor, that would make it run better. Whereas now we just have like super high gigahertz that operates differently, and it's really technical. But the fact that that was like a misidentification of what the future of gaming was going to look like in terms of processing power. And that's why even now some games can't run Crysis all that well, because the chipset and the way it utilizes it is just so different. They didn't think it was going to go that way. I just think that's fucking crazy.
That is wild. So PlayStation 4, once Bloodborne released, that was all she wrote. Like Bloodborne.
Why do people love that game so much? I don't get it.
You know what? We'll dedicate an episode to why do you like Souls games? That can be a good episode.
It'd be just me yelling.
John's just like, angry.
I'm just like, why? Why do you want your shit pushed in every day?
So Sony took the lead again. And obviously the Nintendo Switch, that's practically in every household. That thing is insane. But the PlayStation 5... All right, so we look at the PlayStation 5 compared to the Xbox Series X and S.
Okay, let me prelude this one a little bit too. So I think we have been on the record as saying that I feel that this generational leap has been the shallowest of the console generations by far.
So due to COVID and due to worldwide, so chip shortage, all supply chain issues, you name it, like. It's been a very rough go getting a next gen console. So I'll give Sony credit. They continued to release stuff for the PS4, like Horizon Forbidden West. You can play on PS4.
Yeah,
and I respect this. That pretty much all of the games you can think of that still released on PlayStation 4 have a free upgrade to their PS5 version through the PS4 disc. I respect that because. That contradicts what they used to do. They used to be like, no, we want you to only buy PlayStation 3 games, so now your console can't play PlayStation 2.
I think it's a reactionary. Like, I mean, we can sugarcoat it as much as we want, but it's a reactionary thing to be like, hey, we just had this, came off of this console that sold over almost 120 million units. How are we going to get people to come to our next generation console, especially if they can't buy it?
Yep.
So it's the same thing with the Series X and S. Like, I think the pitch for the Series X and S was a bit safer because they were like, look, we know, like, that's why I preluded like what we're going to talk about. I think it was safer with the Series X and Series S because people kind of understood going in, being like, hey, we've already introduced like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, which are like the supercharged versions of the previous consoles. If you want the super duper charged version of basically what you had before, that's what the PS5 and the Series X are.
So PS5 already over 20 million units sold.
Good for them.
Beating Series X and S, which have only sold 14.94 million.
That's still nothing to sneeze at.
Now, here's the scary part. Of that 20 million, only like 7.96 million of it has been sold here. So that means Japan is carrying the load.
We talked about how big the Xbox was, and now people are like, the PS5 in Japan's like, oh, it's okay. I don't need to live in a house. I'll just have this outside.
Yeah, no comment. So we didn't really touch base on the handhelds because that is its own story in itself.
I still say the PS Vita should have been better. It's just not good.
It was ahead of its time, but it was competing with itself.
No,
like the PSP was still
the PS Vita was basically doing what the Wii U did for the 3DS. Like, why would I develop games for this if it's comparable to this, and if no one has it as much as a PS3 or a PS4, why?
Yep. So
there's so much I want to say about it because I had other friends who were like, PS Vita was great. I don't see why people didn't like it. It's like, can you play Pokemon on it? No.
So
who cares?
Hey, you know what? We're gonna save that. We're gonna have a handheld episode. I don't know about you, but I personally,
I always have something in my hand when we record.
Hey-o. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of fun when we dive into the history because I learned so much that I just did I didn't know.
I was actually gonna posit the same question when we did as we did the Sega episode. I asked you the question, why are we doing this episode? And it's that right there. The idea that the history is fascinating and broad-reaching, and it's over years and years of development, and along with technology, this beautiful marriage of art and science, and that's what makes all this stuff really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I can use as much flowery language as I possibly can, but it's cool to know how the soup's made.
This has been some of the most fun that I've had researching for our episodes, and honestly, that's the history of Sony right there. We are in the PlayStation 5, XS, OLED Switch. We're in the
Switch is going to be the Switch until Nintendo implodes. They're not going to change it. I think that would be hilarious.
I honestly think the Switch is going to run the same length or potential, maybe a little bit shorter or a little bit longer than the PlayStation 2. I think they will still continue pushing the Switch for at least another 7 years.
I am mad.
I agree.
I want my next Mario game to look like the damn movie.
So, let's be real, right? The Switch, everyone owns. You own a Switch. I own multiple Switches.
Why?
One for Martha, one for me.
Oh, okay.
That way, if we both are in the mood to switch simultaneously,
want to switch?
Doesn't ruin it. But no. So we're gonna save handhelds for a different episode, and I want to leave you all with this question: how do you feel knowing a little bit more about the history of a console? Does it make you appreciate it more? Does it make you kind of curious and you want to kind of dive into the thick of it to see, hey, how did what I really enjoy come to be? And if you have that question, let us know across our socials.
Yeah, or tell us to do an episode on the TurboGrafx or the PC Engine.
Ooh-wee.
Because why? But okay.
So, as always, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at Games with John and James. Where can they find us on Twitter, John?
Games with J and J is where as well.
And then we're also on YouTube. So we're still in the works with our video content, but eventually...
And our blog, which I still need to write the Splatoon issue for. I'm going to call them issues.
There you go.
Gamer magazines...
John just had a light bulb.
Yeah, because I was wondering about the SEO and the branding for our blog posts, and we'll just call them issues.
There you go.
It's basically an article, so there you go.
So please, obviously, please listen to what we're putting out, but also
we want to make money off of this, and you're the key to that. So please, God, listen to this.
Help us monetize.
Help us buy more expensive video games that we don't need. Go
to our Patreon. If you subscribe to the low tier of $99.99, you unlock 10 seconds of extra content.
You get my lewds.
No, that is the $199 level.
No, I call it the life insurance tier, where for $500,000, it's basically I don't know, we'll live with you. I don't know, what do you want? just give me $500,000.
So this has been a really wonderful journey, and as you know, our next one that we do eventually will actually be on Microsoft and Xbox. I, for one, am excited because that is not a lot of video game history I've looked into because of, where my interests lie. So I'm excited to dive into John's world with that.
Oh boy, I'm going to be the professor on that one, aren't I?
Yes,
I have to get the little jacket with the leather patches there, so I can lean on the lectern and just be like, and why is that, students?
Mr. Anderson.
I'm gonna be hot teacher.
'Cause I'm hot for teacher.
Yeah, I bet you are.
So
who's hearing this voice and isn't wet already?
So, oh man. So on that note,
abort episode. Go.
I'm James.
I'm John.
And this has been Games with John and James. The history.
And get yourself a towel.
Ayo, the history of Sony. Buy towels.
Don't forget to bring a towel. That's a callback, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Brr.